Christmas came early. We're getting the nerfs a little ahead of schedule. Usually they do nerfs at the end of the month. We're getting it in the middle of the month. They felt these changes were probably necessary. It says here that because these changes may affect play environment of the currently ongoing Altersphere Rotation Cup, detailed explanations including win and usage rates for certain decks archetypes will follow in separate announcement. So they're not going to tell us exactly the stats and why they are nerfing these cards and buffing the one card, because there's currently a Rotation Cup going on. They don't want those stats to affect the Rotation Cup, because if players see those stats and are like, oh, this deck has this win rate, they might just only play that deck. So it makes sense. So I would like to see those numbers so I can talk about this more. But this is my initial reaction on these nerfs. First up is a surprising one. I don't think anyone really saw this coming. It's the nerf to Blazing Line Admiral. So he goes from 7 play points to 8 play points. And his defense gets nerfed from 5 to 4. This one was kind of strange. Invocation is I don't like that the mechanic. It's essentially kind of breaks the game. You get a free card from your deck. We've seen this kind of like just put certain archetypes like way above, like Floros. In Unlimited Gold, City of Gold is really good because it's just a free card from your deck. Yeah, I can see why they nerfed his stats, but the nerf to his cost is a much bigger deal. Even though you get him for free from your deck, when you draw the Line Admiral, it's going to be way harder to play on 8 than 7. And also, if you only play one 8-drop in your deck because you want to find it with Aether, so when you play Aether on turn 7 currently, you will draw your Latham. So if you didn't have Latham already, you will get your Latham for turn 8, which is really important to close out the game. So if you play Aether, you might have a chance of drawing Blazing Line Admiral from your deck now after the nerfs, which is terrible. Like I said, you don't want to draw them, especially in the late game, especially in that point in the game where you probably hit your 15 followers destroyed. I think this guy's pretty fair. Invocation, like I said, I don't like the mechanic, but I think this is pretty fair because 15 followers destroyed is actually kind of like fair and hard to do. Even Token Sword, an archetype that just plays all of the token cards just to get that 15 dead followers. It doesn't really happen until maybe turn 7 or 8, even 9. Then you start getting the Blazing Admirals from your deck. So that's kind of an issue. I think that this card either just you see maybe a one of, or just kind of falls off completely, because it competes with a slot of Latham and searching with Aether. That's a big deal. Or maybe like you play, no, you can't, like you have to have Latham. Right? Currently Sword has to play Latham, so I can't see Blazing Admiral replace him. So like I said, they didn't release the stats on why. Maybe they saw Sword has a really good win rate. Currently, I think Sword is starting to rise in play rate as well. Maybe going to overtake Dragon. But I'm not completely sure. I don't have those numbers currently. Moving on, Miss Miranda goes from 6 play points to 7 play points. It looks like a slight nerf because of spell boost. It essentially can cost 0 even if it was 7 or 6. But what this does is it slows down their snowball. So the Mysteria deck snowballs really well because it can go Mysteria card on turn 2, Mysteria card on turn 3, 2 Mysteria cards on turn 4, and then On 5, they can play up to 3 Mysteria cards, and then they just explode and they just fill the board in turn 5. So this makes it a little bit harder to do that. It's especially punishing for players going second and didn't end up drawing their Greya, because it's more difficult to get that Miranda down on turn 4 with the Evolve. Before, you just have to play 2 Mysteria cards to get Miranda down on turn 4 with the Evolve. Now you have to play 3, so you probably have to draw your Mysteria Knowledge, so it's more important to get your Mysteria Knowledge with your Miss Miranda now. So I can see trying to keep the knowledge just to make sure you have it for Miss Miranda, so you can snowball with that. I don't think the deck's really going to go anywhere from this. Like, it's not going to get, it's not going to go away. It's just going to be a little bit clunkier in the mid game, where it's like trying to spam the board really hard. It's going to be a little bit slower at that. But this doesn't really hurt their end game plan of playing Anne and killing you with Anne Sorcery. This doesn't affect that too much. It just makes their turn 5, 6, even turn 4 weaker. They don't have that much explosive power unless they get the absolute nut draw. Next is the Dragon Nerf. We're all expecting a Dragon Nerf, but I think this is kind of the scapegoat. This the Vile Violet Dragon kind of is taking the hit where Masamune or Poseidon should have took the nerf. I'm not saying Vile Violet Dragon is like not a great card. It's just that it draws you cards, which is nice. It draws you a lot of cards, especially when you combo it with Rending or the other Disdain cards. So making its cost increase makes it harder to do those kind of combos. But what really happens is you draw all your cards, and then the cards you draw are Masamune and Poseidon, and then you play those and you win the game. This guy doesn't really win you the game. It just draws you until those cards are going to win you the game. So it does kind of weaken the consistency of Dragon, not having having maybe less draw or slower draw, because Violet Dragon costs a little bit more. This also makes ramping early more important, so you get your Violet Dragon in the right time if you still want to play this card. Yeah, I also want to see the numbers, because I think that Dragon was very popular at the beginning of this expansion, but slowly, as like the 2 weeks gone on, kind of fell off a little bit. It still has really high numbers, but not as high as like Mysteria. Maybe Sword is actually overtaking it, like I said, but I don't have those numbers. Yeah, I think Dragon's gonna be fine. This is kind of like a slap on the wrist for them. They're important cards. Masamune, Azutahaka, Poseidon, Galmiu are all fine. Dragon's gonna stay the same. Maybe just cut Vile Dragon for something else. But it's still a good card. Just a little bit harder to use beside other Disdain cards. And then we have a buff. We have a buff to Greenhood Axeman. He went from 7 play points to 6 play points. He hasn't seen much play since the rotation of all the strong aggro cards for Forest. This card was played heavily in aggro Forest when it had Brambles, Elf Song, and Barrage. All those cards made the early game for Forest absolutely insane, and also generates you a lot of fairies to play later after you play your Axeman. Right now we don't have Brambles, we don't have Elf Song. We have Fairy Circle, but that card's kind of weak and not played as much. And like currently you don't want to play Fairy Circle just to activate your Axeman, because Axeman costs 7 and it's just too slow. It's not enough pressure. Like you have to put early pressure on the opponent, get their life total really low, and then play Axeman. It's harder to do that now because you don't have like Elf Song. So I think this is pretty fair from 7 to 6, as long as they don't add more cards like Elf Song Brambles to Forest. I think this is pretty fair to make him a little bit cheaper because they don't have those aggressive card generating engines. So I can see this played in maybe a Korwa deck. It's a good tempo play. Just kill one of their followers and then maybe have a big follower stick around and then be able to chip your opponent down. I'm not a fan of like damage that's unavoidable, but Forest is in a spot where they really need something like this to compete with other classes. Oh, I think this is fine. It's interesting because I think Forest is probably now at the point where it has the most buffs out of any class. We saw previous buffs to Yggdrasil and a previous buff to Selwyn, and now we're getting a buff to Greenhood Axeman. So hold on to your Forest legendaries because they might get buffed if this Greenhood Axeman doesn't bring Forest up. You can see Forest going from maybe a currently tier 3 to maybe a tier 2 position. It's hard to say that this may be played in aggro because they don't have the fairy generating engines. I would say this is probably more of a card that would go into a mid-range deck like Korwa, or maybe even a control list. So yeah, this is fine. Like a little surprising, no one really saw that Axeman was going to get buffed. Admiral is a strange one. I think they kind of just killed the card, like unnecessarily just killed the card. But again, I don't have the numbers. Maybe it was necessary to kill the card before it became a big problem. Yeah, meta-wise, this is nice for the currently tier 2 classes because it makes the stronger decks a little less consistent, so they can compete. Like a better chance of competing with the strongest decks because they lose a little bit of consistency. What this does, it's not like it doesn't stop the high roll that these powerful decks get, but it will flatten the numbers overall. So I think what they want to do is, let's say Dragon has a 52% win rate. It's going to lower that win rate by a few percentages because over so many games, this Vile Dragon would have really helped. It's not going to help as much. Same with Miranda, where you're going to have so many games where you get the high roll, but you can't get that perfect high roll anymore because it costs one more. So it's going to kind of lower the win rate of these decks. But probably the play rate for Mysteria is going to still be the highest, I believe. But we'll see. There's a few classes that actually have strong decks. Like I think Haven and Shadow are starting to see a little bit more success now. People are figuring out how those classes are being built. All right. Much more to say about this. Yeah, you get a temporary file bonus on all of these nerfed cards. Yeah, not much to say about that. So they say the next change announcement will probably be February 18th. So they moved it from end of the month to middle of the month, which I think is fine because they don't get the perfect testing they want when they're bringing out an expansion. So we kind of test the expansion for them in the first 2 weeks, and then they do, okay, these cards are too powerful, let's nerf them. I'm okay with that. I'm not okay with like the way previous formula they did was after 2 months of the meta. They nerfed some stuff that was like a little too slow. This is much faster. I think it's fine because 2 weeks, maybe like 3 weeks, is enough time to figure out what's broken. Thanks for watching, guys. Let me know in the comments below what you think about these nerfs, if you agree with them, if you want to see other cards nerfed. Like, I personally want to see Mysteria Knowledge, Masamune, and Poseidon nerfed. Either Masamune or Poseidon, or both. I think those are the problem. But like I said, these will lower the win rate of these stronger decks. Yeah. Check out the stream. Links down below in the description. And thanks for watching.